Alright, I might actually be starting a stream on time. First time for everything. So, we are continuing on into chapter 2, and I have to adjust something real quick. Never-ending adjustment. Alright, so I'm starting on chapter 2. I am still working on uploading the other videos, but I'm also working on switching from Twitch to YouTube because pretty much everyone's phone comes with YouTube. Most people's phones don't come with Twitch, and I don't want to ask a bunch of people that I know to download one app so they can watch my stream just because I asked them to. So I'm going to be switching to YouTube to make life easier for kind of anybody that wants to get into watch my stuff. And YouTube is also where I will be posting the past readings that I've done. So it'll all be kind of in one place, so it's a little bit easier for hopefully people who want to watch. And YouTube's a platform that I'm just a lot more comfortable with in general anyway. The only reason I am reading chapter 2 on Twitch is because it takes time that I didn't expect it to take to activate streaming on YouTube. So once that's done, I'll be all on YouTube. For now though, we're on Twitch, and try just one more thing. Forever adjusting. I think I'll actually be ready to read. So, move you over the tiniest. Good grief. And by one more thing, I mean 5 more things because I thought I was ready, I swear. Alright. I think we're good to go. A person of influence nurtures other people. Chapter 2 of How to Influence People by John Maxwell. Jim says, several years ago, Nancy and I decided that we wanted to help our son Eric become a little more independent. In general, he does really well. In fact, he participates in many activities that... Oh, wait, we're not on Chapter 2. Wait, I already read this. We're on Chapter 3. That's why it sounded so familiar. All right, ignore all that. We're gonna read Chapter 3. A person of influence has faith in people. I forgot that I didn't start with... When I read chapter 1, I read chapters 1 and 2. So the first time I read 2 chapters. So we're going to go and continue on with chapter 3. That first line was so familiar. It's like, wait a minute, this sounds really familiar. Person of influence has faith in people. We're off to a great start here. Jim grew up in Niagara Falls, New York. Today, the population is about 60,000, but when Jim lived there, it had closer to 100,000 people. It was a thriving industrial center with companies such as... Whoa. Never-ending adjustment. All right. It was a thriving industrial center with companies such as DuPont Chemical. It also had cultural offerings, a strong 100-year-old university, and other attractions. But the main focus of the town then was the incredible natural wonder of the falls, as it is still to this day. The Iroquois called it Niagara, meaning thunder of waters. It's an awesome sight. Every minute, more than 12 million cubic feet of water drop a distance of about 180 feet over the edge of the falls. And its total width, including both the Canadian and the American portions, measures more than 3,100 feet. It is rightly called one of the natural wonders of the world. Jim says, back when we were growing up, we heard a lot of stories about the falls and the daredevil stunts people used to pull, like Annie Edison Taylor's going over the falls in a barrel and things like that. One of the great legends of the town was a French acrobat named Charles Blondin, who lived from 1824 to 1897. He crossed over the entire width of the falls on a tightrope back in 1859. That must have taken nerves of steel, since a fall certainly would have killed him. In fact, he crossed the falls several times. He did it once with a wheelbarrow, another time blindfolded, and yet another time on stilts. They say he was quite remarkable. He continued performing even in the 70s. One of the most incredible feats he performed was crossing the falls on a tightrope while carrying a man on his back. Can you imagine that? I guess just crossing over himself wasn't enough for him. But as difficult as the feat must have been on Blondin, I can't help but wondering how he got someone to go with him. That's what you call trust. to climb onto the back of a man who is going to walk more than half a mile on a rope suspended over the most powerful waterfalls in the world. I used to think about that as a kid. What would it be like to see the falls from up on a rope above them? And more important, what person would trust me to carry him across the falls the way that man trusted Blondin? Facts about faith in people. We can't tell you the identity of the man Blondin carried across the falls, but there's no question that he had great faith in the French acrobat. After all, he put his life in the man's hands. You don't see that kind of trust in others every day, but the times you do, it is a very special thing. Faith in people is an essential quality of an influencer when working with others, yet it's a scarce commodity today. Take a look at the following 4 facts about faith. Number 1. Most people don't have faith in themselves. Not long ago, we saw a Shoe comic strip by Jeff McNeely that showed Shoe, the crusty newspaper editor, standing on the mound in a baseball game. Scatcher said to him, "You gotta have faith in your curveball." In the next frame, Shoe remarked, "It's easy for him to say. When it comes to believing in myself, I'm an agnostic." That's the way too many people feel today. They have trouble believing in themselves. They believe they will fail, even when they see a light at the end of the tunnel. They're convinced it's a train. They see a difficulty in every possibility, but the reality is that difficulties seldom defeat people. Lack of faith in themselves usually does it. With a little faith in themselves, people can do miraculous things, but without it, they have a really tough time. Number 2, most people don't have someone who has faith in them. In Just for Today, James Keller tells this story. A sidewalk flower vendor was not doing any business. Suddenly, a happy thought struck him, and he put up this sign. "This gardenia will make you feel important all day long for 10 cents. All at once, his sales begin to increase. In our society today, most people feel isolated. The strong sense of community that was once enjoyed by most Americans has become rare, and many people don't have the family support that was more than common 30 or 40 years ago. For example, evangelist Bill Glass noted over 90% of prison inmates were told by parents while growing up, "They're going to put you in jail." Instead of teaching their children how to believe in themselves, some parents are tearing them down. For many people, even those who are closest to them, don't believe in them. They have no one at their side. No wonder even a little thing like a flower can make a difference in how a person approaches a day. Number 3, most people can tell when someone has faith in them. People's instincts are pretty good at knowing when others have faith in them. They can sense if your belief is genuine or phony. And truly having faith in someone can change that person's life. Jim's wife, Nancy, often says, "When you believe in people, they do the impossible." In his book, Move Ahead with Possibility Thinking, John's friend Robert Schuller, former president of the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, California, tells a wonderful story about an incident that changed his life as a boy. It occurred when his uncle had faith in him and showed it in his words and actions. His car drove past the unpainted barn and stopped in a cloud of summer dust at our front gate. I ran barefooted across the splintery porch and saw my Uncle Henry bound out of the car. He was tall, very handsome, and terribly alive with energy. After many years overseas as a missionary in China, he was visiting our Iowa farm. He ran up to the old gate and put both of his big hands on my 4-year-old shoulders. He smiled widely, ruffled my uncombed hair, and said, "Well, I guess you're Robert. I think you're going to be a preacher someday." That night I prayed secretly, and dear God, make me a preacher when I grow up. I believe that God made me a possibility thinker then and there. As you work to become a person of influence, always remember that your goal is not to get people to think more highly of you. It is to get them to think more highly of themselves. Have faith in them, and they will begin to do exactly that. Number 4, most people will do anything to live up to your faith in them. People rise or fall to meet your level of expectations for them. If you express skepticism and doubt in others, they will return your lack of confidence with mediocrity. But if you believe in them and expect them to do well, then they will go the extra mile trying to do their best. And in the process, they and you benefit. John H. Spaulding expressed the thought this way: those who believe in our ability do more than stimulate us. They create for us an atmosphere in which it becomes easier to succeed. If you have ever been one to trust people and put your faith in them, change your way. If you've never been one to trust people and put your faith in them, then change your way of thinking and begin believing in others. Your life will quickly improve. When you have faith in others, you give them an incredible gift. Give others money, and it's soon spent. Give resources, and they may not be used to their best advantage. Give help, and people will often find themselves back where they started in a short period of time. But give them your faith, and they become more confident, energized, and self-reliant. They become motivated to acquire what they need to succeed on their own. And then later, if you share your money, resources, and help, they're better able to use them to build a better future. In the late 1800s, a salesman from back east arrived at a frontier town excuse me, at a frontier town somewhere on the Great Plains. As he was talking to the owner of a general store, a rancher came in, and the owner asked himself to take care of this customer. The owner excused himself to take care of this customer. As they talked, the salesman couldn't help overhearing their conversation. Seems that the rancher wanted credit for something that he needed. "Are you doing any fencing this spring, Jake?" asked the storekeeper. "I sure am, Bill," said the teacher. "Fencing in or fencing out?" "Fencing in, taking another 360 acres across the creek." "Good to hear it, Jake. You got the credit. Just tell Steve out back what you need." The salesman was dumbfounded. "I've seen all kinds of credit systems," he said, "but never one like that. How does it work?" "Well," said the storekeeper, "let me tell you. If a man's fencing out, that means he's scared, trying to just hold on to what he's got. But if he's fencing in, he's growing and trying to improve. I always give credit to a man who's fencing in because that means he believes in himself." Having faith in people requires more than just words or positive feelings about them. We have to back it up with what we do. As W.T. Purkiser, Professor Emeritus of Religion at Point Loma Nazarene University, clearly saw, faith is more than thinking something is true. Faith is thinking something is true to the extent that we act on it. If you want to help other people and make a positive impact in their lives, you have to treat them with the kind of confidence. Become a believer in people, and even the most tentative and inexperienced people can bloom right before your eyes. How to become a believer in people? We're fortunate because we grew up in positive, affirming environments. As a result, we have an easy time believing in people and expressing that belief. But we realize that not everyone had the benefit of positive upbringing. Most people need to learn how to have faith in others. To build your belief in others, try using these suggestions, created using the letters of the word believe. For B, believe in them before they succeed. Have you ever noticed how many people support a sports team as soon as it starts winning? That happened in San Diego a number of years ago when the Chargers won their division, then won all their playoff games leading into the Super Bowl. The whole town went crazy. You can see the team's lightning bolt symbol everywhere in people's houses, on the back windows of cars, on lapel pins, and so forth. During the height of the Chargers' success, a couple of local radio personalities named Jeff and Jer rallied the people of San Diego by sponsoring a big event at the stadium one morning. The plan was to give the people who showed up T-shirts in the team colors and have them line up in the parking lot in the shape of a giant lightning bolt. Then they would take a picture of it from a helicopter and put it in the newspaper the next morning. A couple of thousand people were required to pull it off, and they hoped enough would show to make it happen. Imagine their surprise when so many people showed up that they ran out of T-shirts and ended up surrounding the human bolt with a border of extras. It was such a big deal that some of the news services picked it up on television in the national news. Everyone loves a winner. It's easy to have faith in people who have already proved themselves. It's much tougher to believe in people before they have proved themselves. But that is the key to motivating people to reach their potential. You have to believe in them first, before they become successful. Sometimes before even they believe in themselves. Some people in your life desperately want to believe in themselves but have little hope. As you interact with them, remember the motto of French World War I hero Marshal Ferdinand Foch. There's no hopeless situations. There are only men and women who have grown hopeless about them. Every person has seeds of greatness within, even though they may currently be dormant. But when you believe in people, you water the seeds and give them the chance to grow. Every time you put your faith in them, you're giving life-sustaining water, warmth, food, and light. If you continue to give encouragement through your belief in them, these people will bloom in time. Emphasize their strengths. We mentioned previously that people mistakenly think that to be influential in other people's lives, they have to be an authority and point out others' deficiencies. People who try that approach become like Lucy from the comic strip Peanuts by Charles Schulz. In one strip, Lucy told poor Charlie Brown, "You, Charlie Brown, are a foul ball in a line drive of life. You are in the shadow of your own goalposts. You are a miscue. You are 3 putts on the 18th green. And you are a 7-10 split in the 10th frame. You are a missed free throw, a shanked 9-iron, and a called 3rd strike. Do you understand? Have I made myself clear?" My goodness. That's hardly a way to positively impact the life of another person. The road to becoming a positive influence on others lies in exactly the opposite direction. The best way to show people your faith in them and motivate them is to focus your attention on their strengths. According to the author and advertising executive Bruce Barton, nothing splendid has ever been achieved except by those who dared believe that something inside them was superior to circumstances. By emphasizing people's strengths, you're helping them believe that they possess what they need to succeed. Praise them for what they do well, both privately and publicly. Tell them how much you appreciate their positive qualities and their skills. And anytime you have the opportunity to compliment and praise them in the presence of their family and friends and close friends, then do it. List their past successes. Even when you emphasize people's strengths, they may need further encouragement to show them you believe in them and to get them motivated. Entrepreneur Mary Kay Ash advised, "Everyone has an invisible sign hanging from their neck saying, 'Make me feel important.' Never forget this message when working with people." One of the best ways to do this is to help people remember their past successes. The account of David and Goliath presents a classic example of how past successes can help a person believe in himself. You may remember this story from the Bible. A 9-foot-tall Philistine champion named Goliath stood before the army of Israel and taunted them every day for 40 days, daring them to send out a warrior to face him. On the 40th day, a young shepherd named David came to the front lines to deliver food to his brothers, who were in Israel's army. While he was there, he witnessed the giant's contemptuous display of taunts and challenges. David was so infuriated that he told King Saul of Israel that he wanted to face the giant in battle. Here's what happened. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and finish him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." David looked back on his past successes, and he had confidence in his future actions. And of course, when he faced the giant, he felled him like a tree, using nothing but a rock and a sling. And when he cut off Goliath's head, his success inspired his fellow countrymen. They routed the Philistine army. Not everyone has the natural ability to recognize past successes and draw confidence from them. Some people need help. If you can show others that they have done well in the past and help them to see their past victories have paved the way for future success, they'll better be able to be moved to action. Listing past successes helps others believe in themselves. Instill confidence when they fail. When you have encouraged people to put your faith in them, and they begin to believe they can succeed in life, they soon reach a critical crossroads. The first time or two that they fail, and they will fail because it's part of life, they have two choices. They can give in or go on. Some people are resilient and willing to keep trying in order to succeed, even when they don't see immediate progress. But others aren't that determined. Some will collapse at the first sign of trouble. To give them a push and inspire them, you need to keep showing your confidence in them, even when they're making mistakes or doing poorly. One of the ways to do that is to tell them about your past troubles and traumas. Sometimes people think that if they're currently successful, you have always been that way. They don't realize that you had your share of flops, failures, and fumbles. Show them that success is a journey, a process, and not a destination. When they realize that you have failed and yet still managed to succeed, they'll realize that it's okay to fail, and their confidence will remain intact. They will learn to think the way baseball legend Babe Ruth did when he said, "Never let the fear of striking out get in the way." Experience some wins together. It's not enough just knowing that failure is a part of moving forward in life. To really become motivated to succeed, people need to believe they can win. John, like many of us, got a taste for winning when he was a kid. John says, "Growing up, I idolized my brother Larry, who was 2.5 years older than I am. After my parents, he was probably the greatest influencer in my life when I was a kid. Larry was always been a great leader and an excellent athlete. Whenever we played basketball, football, or baseball with the kids in the neighborhood, Larry was a captain. A lot of times when they picked teams, I would be the one of the last picked because I was younger and smaller than most of the kids. But as I got older, Larry began picking me more, and that always made me feel good. Not only because it meant my brother cared about me, but because I knew that when Larry picked me, I was going to be on the winning team." You see, Larry was a fierce competitor. He didn't like losing. He always played to win, and he usually did. Together we put quite a few wins under our belts, and I came to expect victory when I played with my brother. Tell people believe they can achieve victory. Put them in a position to experience small successes. Encourage them to perform tasks or take on responsibilities you know they can handle and do well, and give them the assistance they need to succeed. In time, as their confidence grows, they will take on more difficult challenges, but they will be able to face them with confidence and competence because of the positive track record they're developing. Excuse me. Visualize their future success. We heard about an experiment performed with laboratory rats to measure their motivation to live under different circumstances. Scientists dropped the rat into a jar of water that had been placed in total darkness. They timed how long the animal would continue swimming before it gave up and allowed itself to drown. They found that the rat usually lasted a little bit more than 3 minutes. They dropped another rat into the same kind of jar, but instead of placing it in total darkness, they allowed a ray of light to shine into it. Under these circumstances, the rat kept swimming for 36 hours. That's more than several hundred times longer than the one in the dark. Because the rat could see, it continued to have hope. If that is true in laboratory animals, think of how strong the effect of visualization can be on people who are capable of higher reasoning. It's been said that a person can live 40 days without food, 4 days without water, 4 minutes without air, but only 4 seconds without hope. Each time you cast a vision for others and paint a picture of their future success, you build them up, motivate them, and give them reasons to keep on going. Expect a new level of living. German statesman Konrad Adenauer observed, "We all live under the same sky, but we don't all have the same horizon." As an influencer, you have the goal of helping others see beyond today and their current circumstances and dream big dreams. When you put your faith in people, you help them expand their horizons and motivate them to move to a whole new level of being. Integral to the new way of living is a change in attitude. According to Dennis Waitley, the winner's edge is not in gifted birth, high IQ, or in talent. The winner's edge is in all the attitude, not aptitude. Attitude is the criterion for success. As people's attitudes change from doubt to confidence in themselves and their ability to succeed and reach their potential, everything in their lives changes for the better. Jim and Nancy gained incredible insights about the power of putting their faith into others several years ago when they decided to take a chance with their son Eric on a mountain in Utah. Here's Jim's account of it. Take a drink break, if you'll excuse me. When you have a disabled child, you constantly fight a battle of emotions between providing him new experiences and protecting him from injury or failure. Our life with Eric has been no exception. Despite his limitations, which include having to use a wheelchair and having very little use of his right hand, Eric was a great positive spirit. And often if there was his hesitation in trying new things, it comes from Nancy and me rather than him. About 5 years ago, Nancy got the idea that we should take Eric skiing. She had heard from a friend about a place in Park City, Utah called the National Ability Center. There they offer people with disabilities instructions and assistance in snow skiing, swimming, tennis, water skiing, horseback riding, rafting, and other activities. She thought the experience would be great for his self-esteem. I have to admit, I was skeptical about it from the very beginning. Knowing how difficult the sport is for me, I had trouble imagining Eric racing down a 10,000-foot mountain that wasn't helping the knowledge that a blow to Eric's head could cause him to have a seizure that would put him in a hospital for more brain surgery. But Nancy had faith that Eric could do it, and when she believes, so does he, and off we went to give it a try. When we got up to Deer Valley and met some of the people who work at the National Ability Center, I started to feel a bit better about it. They were professional and extremely positive, and they showed us the equipment that Eric would be using, a type of bi-ski with a molded seat. Eric would be put in the chair and steer using a bar attached to outrigger skis. When we started to fill out paperwork, we were momentarily paralyzed when we read the waiver that said that Eric would be engaging in activities that would involve risk of serious injury, including permanent disability and death. It made the risk seem very real. But by this time, Eric was very excited, and we didn't want to see him, and we didn't want him to see any hesitation from us. After Velcro fastening Eric into his bi-ski and giving him some pointers, Stephanie, his young instructor, took him up to the bunny slope. About 10 minutes later, we got excited as we saw Eric coming down the hill with the biggest smile on his face. We were so proud of him that we were giving him high fives and patting him on the back. I thought to myself, that wasn't so bad. Then off they went again. What we didn't know was that this time they were going to the top of the mountain. At the bottom of the hill we waited. And waited. We weren't sure whether we'd see Eric come down the mountain on his skis or on a stretcher with the ski patrol. Finally, after about 30 minutes, we saw him and Stephanie come around a bend and ski to the bottom of the slope. His cheeks were flushed. He was grinning like the Cheshire Cat. He loved it. "Move over, Dad," he said as he blew past us. "I'm going up again." Eric skied every day on that trip. In fact, when he finished skiing one day, he told us, "Stephanie didn't take me up the mountain today." "Oh," said Nancy, "who skied with you?" "Some one-legged guy," answered Eric. "What?" screeched Nancy. "What do you mean, some one-legged guy?" "Yep," said Eric, "a one-legged guy." Then Eric smiled mischievously and said, "Want to know how he lost his leg? Avalanche." Eric has been skiing every year since then. His life hasn't been the same. He now has confidence that he never had before. He's willing to try just about everything. He swims 3 days a week, works out with weights, plays power soccer, and does other sorts of things. I guess you could say that he has adopted the motto of the National Ability Center as his own. If I can do this, I can do anything. If they had done things Jim's way, Eric never would have gotten the chance to experience what he did on the mountain in Utah 5 years ago. Jim loves Eric with all his heart, but he tends to want to play it safe. Putting your faith in others involves taking a chance, but the rewards outweigh the risks. Robert Louis Stevenson said, "To be what we are and become what we are capable of becoming is the only end of life." When you put your faith in others, you help them reach their potential, and you become an important influencer in their lives. Influence checklist. Having faith in people. Find a strength. Think about someone you'd like to encourage. Find a strength that the person has, and point it out to him or her. Use your interaction as an opportunity to express confidence in the person. Build on past success. If you have to give someone difficult assignment in the near future, take some time to recall his or her past successes. Then, when you meet with the person, review those past successes. If you go through this process and don't recall any past successes, that's a sign you spent too little time getting to know the person. Plan to spend some time together to get better acquainted. Help others overcome defeat. If you have colleagues, friends, employees, or family members who have recently experienced a defeat of some kind, take time to chat with them about it. Let them tell you the whole story, and when they're done, make it clear that you value them and still believe strongly in them. Start off right. The next time you recruit new people for your organization, start the relationship right. Instead of waiting until they prove themselves to praise them, make a point to repeatedly express your faith in them and their ability before they give you results. You'll be pleased by their desire to live up to your positive expectations. And that was chapter 3. Yeah, so I looked in the index at the end of the last read-through, and I discovered that like the first and second chapters are the longest, so I think these are going to get easier to read from here. So we're half an hour in. We're going to read chapter 4 as well, but I want to kind of take a second to talk about what we read and kind of some thoughts that I had while I was reading it. Maybe adjust a few things here and there. So one of the thoughts that I had while I was reading it is how easy it is to get cynical, how easy it is to kind of, this is hard advice is what it comes down to. Well, we got chapter 3. So hard advice is what this comes down to, because it's everybody at some point, typically speaking, gets discouraged or gets kind of maybe not betrayed, but like loses faith in people. They get to the point where like it's hard to see people, it gets hard to have faith in people. Like I think as children it's really easy to have faith in people because we're kind of trained to have faith in our parents, to kind of trust and rely on them, but then we kind of become teenagers and the real world hits and people kind of disappoint you. And then it's really, really hard to go back and have faith again. And that's kind of the struggle of this chapter that this chapter is encouraging you to overcome. So what this book is kind of positing is that you kind of have to get over your own issues and take a step out for people. Like, not like foolishly have faith in anybody for anything, but kind of take a look at how you think about people and how you treat people and question whether it's your own lack of faith in the person that's the problem. And if that's the case, then that's something that you need to kind of begin to control and try to get over. And I know that I struggle with that a lot. I used to be really, really cynical. I still am to some degree. And it's something I'm still working on. But I used to be really, really cynical. And like that was kind of part of my identity. So that being part of my identity, like it kind of made me not a very likable person. And that's kind of a side of me that I have to kind of tame and control sometimes. And sometimes I excuse like not letting that side of me show as much as me having that under control. And that's not the same thing, because I think this book mentions that people can read intentions. They can read, like when you're in conversation with people, people can read like whether you're being sincere or not. They can read whether you're being genuine or not. It's quite obvious to people. So even if you are good at hiding kind of a cynical side, it's still going to call your actions and it's still going to be communicated subconsciously in your conversations in daily life. So that's kind of a big challenge. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that, but that's just something to keep in mind. Like cynicism is not really a positive, strong way forward. That's something that I've discovered over and over again in life. And other great people that I respect. It was Abraham Lincoln who almost died in a duel because he just basically lambasted somebody in like a newspaper. And from like that day forward, he would never criticize anyone ever again. No matter how, even if he was like really tempted to. May or may not be completely true, but it's at least close to true. And that's kind of something that I try to live by. Criticism can be pretty damaging when it's not controlled and when it's not done right or done well or done with positive intentions. So And it's just so easy to just kind of tear people down. It's much harder to build people up and be positive. So let's continue on to the next chapter. Let's adjust one thing, if I can. Real quick. I know, this is weird. Oh my goodness, what was that noise? Shh, nothing. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. A person of influence listens to people. If you were going on a job interview today, what would you say is the most important skill you would need? Is it writing to create a knockout resume? Or maybe salesmanship? After all, isn't that what you're going to do in the interview? Sell yourself? Or let's say that instead of going on an interview, you are going to spend your day recruiting, whether for business prospects, ministry workers, or people to play on your softball team. What skill would you need as a recruiter? Discernment? An eye for talent? The ability to cast vision and get people excited? Or maybe it is a hard-nosed, or maybe it will be hard-nosed negotiation skills. Better yet, let's say your job today was to supply new ideas for your organization. What qualities would you need? Creativity? Intelligence? Would you need a good education? What is the number one ability that you would need? No matter which one of these three tasks you are going to take on today, you would need one skill over all others. More than talent, discernment, or charm is the one skill that all great leaders recognize as indispensable in their ability to influence others and succeed. It's the ability to listen. Not everyone is quick to learn the lesson of the importance of listening. Take, for example, Jim's experience. Fresh from Purdue University's engineering school, I started out in the corporate environment at McDonnell Douglas, where they had about 40,000 employees. I was working in the advanced design group for the DC-10, doing wind tunnel analysis and computer simulations of the airplane's performance. But it didn't take me long to realize that I wasn't going to be there for my whole career. Some of the guys I worked with had been there for 2 decades, and nothing had changed in them for those 20 years. They were in a holding pattern, waiting for the gold watch. But I wanted to make a greater impact on my world. That's when I started to pursue other business opportunities. When I found the right one, I began trying to recruit others to join me. Back then, my strategy was to meet people in the huge employee cafeteria. After waiting in line to get my lunch, I'd look for a seat next to a sharper-looking guy who was sitting by himself. I'd strike up a conversation with him. First chance I got, I'd bombard him with information and try to persuade him with impressive facts and irrefutable logic. I managed to intimidate a few people with the force of my convictions, but I was unsuccessful in building a productive relationship with anyone. I'd been doing this for several months with very little success, when one day I was talking with a guy from another department. He was telling me about the frustration he was having with his boss, about some problems he was having at home. He just found out his oldest child needed braces. Their old clunker of a car was on its last legs. He wasn't sure how he was going to make it. I really felt for the guy. I wanted to get to know him better. Then suddenly I realized that I could help him out. He was feeling powerless in the job, and he had money problems. 2 things that could be helped by being in business for himself. So I started to tell him about my business and explain how it might solve some of the problems. And to my shock, he was actually very interested. That day it hit me. What an idiot I've been. I can't succeed with others by dumping information on them. If I want to help them or have a positive impact on people, I need to learn how to listen to them. The value of listening. Edgar Watson Howe once joked, "No man would listen to you talk if he didn't know it was his turn next." Unfortunately, that accurately describes the way too many people approach communication. They're too busy waiting for their turn to really listen to others. But people of influence understand the incredible value of becoming a good listener. For example, when Lyndon B. Johnson was a junior senator from Texas, he kept a sign on his office wall that read, "You ain't learning nothing when you're doing all the talking." The ability to skillfully listen is one key to gaining influence with others. Consider these benefits to listening that we've found. Listening shows respect. Psychologist Dr. Joyce Brothers said, Listening, not intimidation, may be the sincerest form of flattery. Not imitation. Intimidation. Good grief. Yes, intimidation is the most sincere form of flattery. You heard it here first. So listening, not imitation, may be the sincerest form of flattery. Whenever you don't pay attention to what others have to say, you send them the message that you don't value them. But when you listen to others, you communicate that you respect them. Even more, you show them that you care. A mistake that people often make in communication is trying very hard to impress the other person. They try to make themselves appear smart, witty, or entertaining. But if you want to relate well to others, you have to be willing to focus on what they have to offer. Be impressed and interested, not impressive and interesting. Poet-philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson acknowledged, "Every man I meet is in some way my superior, and I can learn of him." Remember that and listen, and the lines of communication will really open up. Listening builds relationships. Dale Carnegie, author of How to Win Friends and Influence People, a book that I read and is very good, advised, "You can make more friends in 2 weeks by becoming a good listener than you can in 2 years trying to get other people interested in you." Carnegie was incredibly gifted at understanding relationships. He recognized that people who are self-focused and who talk about themselves and their concerns all the time rarely develop strong relationships with others. By becoming a good listener, you are able to connect with others on more levels and develop stronger, deeper relationships because you are meeting a need. Author C. Neil Straight pointed out that everyone needs someone who he feels really listens to him. When you become that important listener, you help that person, and it takes a significant step towards becoming a person of influence in his or her life. Listening increases knowledge. Wilson Misner said, "A good listener is not only popular everywhere, but after a while he knows something." It's amazing how much you can learn about your friends and family, your job, the organization you work in, and yourself when you decide to really listen to others. But not everyone clues in to this benefit. For example, we heard a story about a tennis pro who was giving a lesson to a new student. After watching the novice take several swings at the tennis ball, the pro stopped him and suggested that ways he could improve his stroke. But each time he did, the student interrupted him and gave his opinion of the problem and how it should be solved. After several interruptions, the pro began to nod his head in agreement. When the lesson ended, a woman who had been watching said to the pro, "Why did you go along with the arrogant man's stupid suggestions?" The pro smiled and replied, "I learned a long time ago that it's a waste of time to try to sell real answers to anyone who just wants to buy echoes." It's interesting. Beware of putting yourself into a position where you think you know all the answers. Anytime you do, you'll be putting yourself in danger. It's almost impossible to think of yourself as the expert and continue growing and learning at the same time. All great learners are great listeners. One common problem as people gain more authority is that they often listen to others less and less, especially the people who report to them. While it's true that the higher you go, the less you are required to listen to others, it's also true that your need for good listening skills increases. The further you get from the front lines, the more you have to depend on others to get reliable information. Only if you develop good listening skills early and then continue to use them will you be able to gather the information that you need to succeed. As you proceed through life and become more successful, don't lose sight of your need to keep growing and improving yourself. Remember, a deaf ear is evidence of a closed mind. Listening generates ideas. Fresh, innovative ideas help us find new ways to solve old problems, to generate new products and processes to keep our organizations growing, and to continue growing and improving personally. Plutarch of ancient Greece asserted, "Know how to listen, and you will profit even from those who talk badly." When we think about innovative companies that never seem to run out of ideas, 3M immediately comes to mind. That company seems to develop new products faster than just about any other manufacturer. The organization has a reputation for being open to employees' ideas and for listening to customers. In fact, a representative of 3M once said the number one resource for product ideas was customer complaints. Good companies have a reputation for listening to their people. Chili's Restaurants, one of the nation's best-run food service chains according to Restaurants and Institutions magazine, is known for that quality too. Almost 80% of its menu has come from suggestions made by unit managers. What's good for effective companies is good for individuals. When you constantly listen to others, you never suffer for ideas. People love to contribute, especially when the leader shares the credit with them. If you give people opportunities to share their thoughts and you listen with an open mind, there will always be a flow of new ideas. And even if you hear ideas that don't work, just listening to them can often spark other creative thoughts in you and others. You'll never know how close you are to $1 million idea unless you're willing to listen. Listening builds loyalty. Funny thing that happens when you don't make a practice of listening to people. Find others who will. Anytime employees, spouses, colleagues, children, or friends no longer believe that you're listening to them, they seek out people who will give them what they want. Sometimes the consequences can be disastrous. The end of a friendship, lack of authority at work, lessening parental influence, or breakdown of a marriage. On the other hand, practicing good listening skills draws people to you. And if you consistently listen to others, valuing them and what they have to offer, they are likely to develop a strong loyalty to you, even when your authority with them is unofficial or informal. Listening is a great way to help others and yourself. Roger G. Imhoff urged, "Let others confide in you. It may not help you, but it will surely help them." At first glance, listening to others may appear to benefit only them. But when you become a good listener, you put yourself in a position to help yourself too. You have the ability to develop strong relationships, gather valuable information, and increase your understanding of yourself and others. Common barriers to listening. Few people have reached their potential when it comes to listening. If you aren't as skilled at listening as you would like to be, then the first thing to do to improve your ability is to be aware of common barriers to listening. Overvaluing talking. That's kind of funny. Nothing. A comic once described listening as being composed of the rude interruptions between my exclamations. Many people's attitudes about listening agree with that statement more than they would like to admit. For example, good grief, I lost my place. For example, if you ask 6 people how they could improve their communication skills, most of them would describe the need to become more persuasive or sharpen their public speaking skills. Few would cite a desire to listen better. Most people overvalue talking and undervalue listening, even those in people-related jobs such as sales. But the truth is that effective communication is not persuasion, it's listening. Think about it. Nobody ever listened himself or herself out of a sale. Good communicators know to monitor their talking to listening ratio. President Abraham Lincoln, considered one of the most effective leaders and communicators in our nation's history, said, "When I'm ready to reason with a man, I spend 1/3 of my time thinking about myself and what I'm going to say, and 2/3 thinking about him and what he is going to say." It's a good ratio to maintain. Listen twice as much as you speak. Lacking focus. For some people, especially those with high energy, slowing down enough to really listen can be challenging. Most people tend to speak about 180 words per minute, but they can listen at 300 to 500 words a minute. That disparity can create tension and cause a listener to lose focus. Most people try to fill up that communication gap by finding other things to do, such as daydream, think about their daily schedule, or mentally review their to-do list. If you want to become a better listener, however, you need to learn to direct that energy and attention positively by concentrating on that person you're with. Observe body language. Watch for changes in facial expression. Look into the person's eyes. Management expert Peter Drucker remarked, "The most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said." If you expend your extra energy by observing the other person closely and interpreting what he or she says, your listening skills will improve dramatically. Experiencing mental fatigue. Former President Ronald Reagan told an amusing story about 2 psychiatrists, one older and one younger. Each day they showed up to work immaculately dressed and alert. But at the end of the day, the younger doctor was frazzled and disheveled, while the older man was fresh as ever. "How do you do it?" the younger psychiatrist finally asked his colleague. "You always stay so fresh after hearing patients all day." The older doctor replied, "It's easy. I never listen." Whenever you listen to others for extended periods of time, the effect can be exhausting. But any kind of mental fatigue can negatively affect your ability to listen. If If you're tired or facing difficult circumstances, remember that to remain an effective listener, you have to dig up more energy, concentrate, and stay focused. Stereotyping. Stereotyping others can be a huge barrier to listening. It tends to make us hear what we expect rather than what the other person actually says. Most of us may think that we don't fall into this trap, but we all do to some degree. Read the following humorous list of stereotype breakers from a piece called Things I'd Like to Hear, But Won't, created by David Grimes. If you never expect to hear any of these things from the people listed, then you might be guilty of stereotyping. From my auto mechanic. That part is much less expensive than I thought. You could have done that more cheaply at the garage downtown. It was just a loose wire, no charge. From a store clerk. The computerized cash register is down. I'll just add up your purchases with pencil and paper. I'll take a break after I finish waiting on these customers. We're sorry we sold you defective merchandise. We'll pick it up at your home and bring you a new one or give you a complete refund, whichever you prefer. From the dentist. I think you're flossing too much. I won't ask you any questions until I take the pick out of your mouth. From a restaurant server. I think it's presumptuous for the waiter to volunteer his name, but since you ask, it's Tim. I was slow and inattentive. I cannot accept my tip. These statements are clever, and they are also a reminder that it's a bad idea to stereotype others. Whenever you treat people strictly as members of a group rather than as individuals, you can get into trouble. If you talk to people and find yourself thinking of them as computer geeks, typical teenagers, ditzy blondes, stiff engineer types, or some other representative of a group instead of as individual people, beware. You may not really be listening to what they have to say. Carrying personal emotional baggage. Nearly everyone has emotional filters that prevent him or her from hearing certain things that other people say. Your past experiences, both positive and negative, color the way you look at life and shape your expectations. And particularly strong experiences such as traumas or incidents from childhood can make you tend to react strongly whenever you perceive you are in a similar situation. As Mark Twain once said, a cat who sits on a hot stove will never sit on a hot stove again. He'll never sit on a cold stove either. From then on, the cat just won't like stoves. If you've never worked through strong past emotional experiences, you may be filtering out what others say through those experiences. If you're preoccupied with certain topics, if a particular subject makes you defensive, or if you frequently project your point of view onto others, you may need to work through your issues before you can become an effective listener. Being preoccupied with self. Probably the most formidable barrier to listening is preoccupation with self. Many years ago, we saw a TV sketch that illustrates this point really well. Husband was watching television and his wife was trying to engage him in conversation. All right, I'm going to do something I'm probably going to regret here. I'm going to use some voices. Wife. Dear, the plumber didn't make it in time to fix the leak in the hot water today. Husband. Uh-oh. Wife. So the pipe burst and flooded the basement. Husband. Quiet. It's third down and goal to go. Wife. So the wiring got wet and almost electrocuted Fluffy. Husband. Oh no, they've got a man open. Shoot, touchdown! Wife. It says he'll be better in a week. Husband. Can you get me something to eat? Wife. The plumber finally came and said that he was happy our pipe broke because now he can afford to go on vacation. Husband. Aren't you listening? I said I'm hungry. Wife. It's Stanley. I'm leaving you. The plumber and I are flying to Acapulco this morning. Husband. Can you please stop all the yakking and get me something to eat? Trouble around here is nobody ever listens to me. That was awful, and I apologize. If you don't care about anyone but yourself, you're not going to listen to others. But the ironic thing is that when you don't listen, you damage yourself. The damage you do to yourself is ultimately even greater than what you do to other people. How to develop listening skills. According to Brian Adams, author of Sales Cybernetics, during the average waking day, we spend most of it listening. He offers the following statistics. 9% of the day is spent writing. 16% of the day is spent reading. 30% of the day is spent speaking. 45% of the day is spent listening. So you probably agree that listening is important. Well, what does it mean to listen? We heard a story about a high school music appreciation class that provides a meaningful answer to that question. The teacher of the class asked for a volunteer to explain the difference between listening and hearing. At first, no one wanted to answer, but finally a student raised his hand. When the teacher called on him, he said, "Listening is wanting to hear." That answer is a great start. To become a good listener, you have to want to hear. You also need some skills to help you. Here's 9 suggestions to help you become a better listener. Number 1, look at the speaker. The whole listening process begins with giving the other person your undivided attention. As you interact with someone, don't catch up on other work, shuffle papers, do the dishes, or watch television. And put away your phones. If you don't have time at the moment, then schedule it as soon as you can. Don't interrupt. Most people react badly when being interrupted. It makes them feel disrespected. According to Robert L. Montgomery, author of Listening Made Easy, it's just as rude to step on people's ideas as it is to step on their toes. People who tend to interrupt others generally do so for one of these reasons. They don't place enough value on what the other person has to say. They want to impress others by showing how smart and intuitive they are. They're too excited by the conversation to let the other person finish talking. That happens a lot at my work. If you're in the habit of interrupting other people, examine your motives and determine to make a change. Give people the time they need to express themselves. Don't feel that one of you has to be speaking all the time. Periods of silence give you the chance to reflect on what's being said so that you can respond appropriately. Focus on understanding. Excuse me. Oh no. And we're back. Focus on understanding. Have you ever noticed how quickly most people forget the things they hear? Studies at institutions such as Michigan State, Ohio State, Florida State, and the University of Minnesota indicate that most people can recall only about 50% of what they hear immediately after hearing it. As time passes, their ability to remember continues to drop. By the next day, their retention is usually down to about 25%. One way to combat that tendency is to make your goal understanding rather than just remembering facts. Lawyer, lecturer, and author Herb Cohen emphasize effective listening requires more than hearing the words transmitted. It demands that you find meaning and understanding in what is being said. After all, meanings are not in words, but in people. To increase your understanding of others as you listen, follow these guidelines offered by Eric Allenby. Listen with a head-heart connection. Listen with the intent of understanding. Listen for the message and the message behind the message. Listen for both content and feelings. Listen with your eyes. Your hearing will be improved. Listen for others' interests, not just their position. Listen for what they are saying and not saying. Listen with empathy and acceptance. Listen for the areas where they are afraid and hurt. Listen as you would like to be listened to. As you learn to put yourself in another person's place, your ability to understand will increase. And the greater your ability to understand, the better listener you will become. Determine the need at the moment. The ability to discern the other person's need at the moment is part of becoming an effective listener. People talk for so many different reasons: to receive comfort, to vent, to persuade, to inform, to be understood, or to relieve nervousness. Often people talk to you for reasons that don't match your expectations. A lot of men and women find themselves in conflict because they occasionally communicate at cross purposes. They neglect to determine the need of the other person at the moment of interaction. Men usually want to fix any problems they discuss. Their need is resolution. Women, on the other hand, are more likely to tell about a problem simply to share it. They often neither request nor desire solutions. Anytime you determine the current need of the people you're communicating with, you can put whatever they say into the appropriate context, and you will better be able to understand them. Check your emotions. As we've already mentioned, most people carry around emotional baggage that causes them to react to certain people or situations. Anytime you become highly emotional when listening to another person, check your emotions, especially if your reaction seems to be stronger than the situation warrants. You don't want to make an unsuspecting person the recipient of your venting. Besides, even if your reactions are not due to an event from your past, you should always allow others to finish explaining their points of view, ideas, or convictions before offering your own. Suspend your judgment. Have you ever begun listening to another person tell a story and started to respond to it before he or she is finished? Just about everyone has. But the truth is that you can't jump to conclusions and be a good listener at the same time. As you talk to others, wait to hear the whole story before you respond. If you don't, you may miss the most important thing they intend to say. Sum up at major intervals. Experts agree that listening is most effective when it's active. John H. Malinchard suggests, comment on what you hear and individualize your comments. For example, you can say, Cheryl, that's obviously very important to you. It will help keep you on track as a listener. Get beyond, that's interesting. If you train yourself to comment meaningfully, the speaker will know that you are listening and may offer further information. A technique for active listening is to sum up what the other person says at major intervals. As the speaker finishes one subject, paraphrase his or her main points or ideas before going on to the next one, and verify that you have gotten the right message. Doing that reassures a person and helps you stay focused on what he or she is trying to communicate. Number 8. Ask questions for clarity. Have you ever noticed that the top reporters are excellent listeners? Take someone like Barbara Walters, for example. She looks at the speaker, focuses on understanding, suspends judgment, and sums up what the person has to say. People trust her and seem to be willing to tell her just about anything. But she practices another skill that helps her gather more information and increase her understanding of the people she's interviewing. She asks good questions. If you want to become an effective listener, become a good reporter. Not a stick the microphone in your face and bark questions at you reporter, but someone who gently asks follow-up questions and seeks clarification. If you show people how much you care and ask in a non-threatening way, you'll be amazed at how much they tell you. 9. Always make listening your priority. The last thing to remember when developing your listening skills is to make listening a priority. No matter how busy you become, how far you rise in your organization, a remarkable example of a busy executive who made time for listening was the late Sam Walton, founder of Walmart and one of the richest men in America. He believed in listening to what people had to say, especially his employees. He once flew his plane to Mount Pleasant, Texas, landed and gave instructions to his co-pilot to meet him about 100 miles down the road. He then rode in a Walmart truck the rest of the way so that he could chat with the driver. We should all give listening that kind of priority. In our careers, we have done a lot of speaking. Between the two of us, we speak to several 100,000 people every year. Nancy does a lot of speaking, and believe us, she is a great talker, but she's also a wonderful listener. And sometimes when she speaks, she talks about communication and the importance of listening. Once she gave a talk about listening that emphasized giving other people the benefit of the doubt, trying to see things from their point of view. In the audience that day was a man named Rodney. Though he was happily married and had a young son, he had previously married and had 2 daughters with his first wife. And he was having problems with her. She was constantly calling him and asking for more money for herself and the 2 girls. They argued continually. She was driving him so nuts he had already hired an attorney and was prepared to sue her. But when Rodney heard Nancy speak about listening that day, he realized how insensitive he had been to his ex-wife, Charlotte. A couple of days later, he called her and asked if they could meet. She was suspicious of Rodney and even asked her attorney to call him to find out what he was up to. But eventually, Rodney convinced them that he just wanted to talk. Finally, Charlotte agreed to see him. They met at a coffee shop, and Rodney said, Charlotte, I want to listen to you. Tell me what your life is like. I do care about you and the kids. I don't think you cared about the girls at all, she said and began to cry. I do, he said. I'm sorry. I've only been thinking of myself. I haven't been thinking of you. Please forgive me. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because I want to make things right, he answered. I've been angry for so long that I couldn't see straight. Now, tell me how things are going for you and the girls. For a while, Charlotte could only sob. And then she started telling him about her struggles as a single parent, how she was doing her best to bring up the girls. But that didn't seem like enough. They talked for hours, and as they did, the beginning of a new foundation of mutual respect formed. In time, they believe they will be able to become friends again. Rodney's probably not alone. Can you think of people you haven't been listening to lately? What are you going to do about it? It's never too late to become a good listener. It can change your life and the lives of the people in your life. Influence checklist. Listening to people. Measure your listening skills. Have someone who knows you well use the following questions to evaluate your listening skills according to the 9 qualities of good listening discussed in this chapter. Ask him or her to explain any no answers. And don't interrupt or defend yourself as you receive the explanation. Number 1. Do I usually look at the speaker while he or she is talking? Number 2. Do I wait for the speaker to finish talking before I respond? Number 3. Do I make understanding my goal? Number 4. Am I usually sensitive to the speaker's immediate need? And number 5. Do I make it a practice to check my emotions? Number 6. Do I regularly suspend my judgment until I get the whole story? Number 7. Am I in the practice of summing up what the speaker says at major intervals? Number 8. Do I ask questions for clarity when needed? And number 9. Do I communicate to others that listening is a priority? Strategy for improvement. Based on the answers received, list 3 ways you could improve your listening skills. Commit yourself to make these improvements during the coming weeks. Schedule a listening occasion. Make an appointment with the most important person in your life this week. Plan to spend an hour together just communicating. Give that person your undivided attention. Spend at least 2/3 of the time just listening to him or her. That was Chapter 4, Listening, in How to Influence People by John Maxwell. Chapter 5, which I'm not going to read today, I'm probably going to read on Monday. A person of influence understands people. Seems kind of related to listening, but I guess we'll find out later how and if it is so. Ooh. All right. So that's it for the reading session this week. I will upload. I need to re-encode and do some crazy stuff. That's the only reason I didn't upload the other videos. I will upload this and the 2 other sessions. I've already uploaded one of them. I had another one transcoding actually while I was reading just now. And I'm going to have all of these uploaded to YouTube today, so that those are available over the weekend if you want to catch up. If you want to listen to the stream and kind of be able to follow along in the coming weeks, you'll be able to catch up and listen to these ones in the past, and hopefully I'll kind of keep the series in a library so that anybody that wants to listen to something like this has this to listen to. I'm interested in suggestions. I really like self-help books, but if somebody has a book or book series that they want me to read, I'd really like to hear about it. Do leave a comment either on Twitch chat or on YouTube or any other way that I have marked to reach me. I should be available on Facebook and YouTube and hopefully other channels as I go forward and kind of develop this. But if you stayed and watched this, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming and listening, as it were. And I hope to stream again on Monday at 7:30, and then Wednesday, and then Friday next week. Thank you again.